Hi everyone, I'm Alan Matthew. Today I'm going to talk about igcse biochemistry. Chapter 1 is about classification. Before getting to chapter 1, let's talk about cells. Because cells is one of the most important things you need to get into before getting into anything. So, cells. This is a plant cell, as you can see here. And this is the nucleus of a plant cell. And this is a vacuole. Animal cells also have vacuoles, but they're called vesicles and they're in small amounts. They're tiny in animals. And this is a cell membrane and this is a cell wall. And this is chloroplast. And inside this contains chlorophyll, which makes the plants green color. So let's move on to the chapter now. Before getting into chapter, we should know what is Mrs. Gren. So MRS Gren. What does Mrs. Gren stands for? What is Mrs. Gren? Do you guys know? Mrs. Gren. The M in Mrs. Gren stands for movement. The R in Mrs. Gren stands for respiration. The S stands for sensitivity. The G stands for growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. What is movement? Movement is moving from one place to another. Respiration, taking in of oxygen, and giving out carbon dioxide. In plants, it's opposite. Sensitivity is when you touch a hot pan, you feel pain and you move away. That's sensitive. You feel something. You feel the heat of the pan. You feel cold. Growth is when you grow. Reproduction is when you give out an offspring. When you give birth to a new baby. Excretion is when you poop or when you sweat. These are all excretes. You are excreting this. Then there is nutrition. Nutrition is taking in substance and using it for growth as an energy waste. Like when you eat a banana, it provides you energy. It gives you nutrition. It's good for your brain. Banana contains lots of potassium. When you eat it, you digest it, and it will give you energy. Now, these are all properties of a living organism. You can identify living organism by these properties. If they follow these properties, they could be a living organism. But there are some substances which follow these properties, but they are not living organisms. For example, fire. Fire has movement. It takes in oxygen. It grows. It excretes ash. But it's not a living organism. Because it doesn't follow the cell theory. Now you may ask, what is a cell theory? The cell theory is a theory where everything which contains cells are living organisms. We have cells in us, hence we are considered living organisms. Now let's talk about how to classify an organism. How to differentiate between animals, which is like if it's a zebra or a donkey. It could be done using few studies, like for example, it's the study of morphology. It's the study of their shape. What do they look like? If an insect, does it have wings? Is it can it fly? This is the study of morphology. And then there is anatomy. Anatomy is two words. This is the Latin words. Two words. Ana means up and tomi means cut. So it means cutting up stuff. It's the study of detailed body structures. And then there is a study of DNA. And using these studies, we could identify an unknown animal. And after studying this unknown animal, if it's a new animal, we can name it. To name it, we need to use binomial system. Before naming this, we should know about the classification system. So this is the classification system. So the classification contains 7 classifications. So these are the 7 classifications. First, we have the kingdom, then phylum, then class, then order, then family, then genus, then species. So these are the 7 classifications of an animal. a living organism. So we'll get into this more. So now we'll talk about how to name an organism. So we name an organism using the binomial system. What is the binomial system? The binomial system is, you use the binomial system to name an animal or a new species. So in a binomial system we use genus. The first word should be a genus. Genus is a group, a specification, a classification. So genus, the first word should always be the genus of the animal, the genus name of the animal. The second name should be the species name of the animal. And for the first word, the first letter should always be capital, and rest of the letters of the second word and the first word should always be small letters. That's how a binomial system works. And this name is mostly it's mostly in Latin. Now let's discuss about the kingdom animals. The kingdom animals, the animals has multicellular cells. That means they have lots of cells in them, and they have a nucleus, but they don't have, in a cell they have nucleus, but they don't have cell wall or chloroplast. As we talked before, this is a cell. They don't have a cell wall or a chloroplast. They only have a cell nucleus. They also don't have large vacuoles. They have small vacuoles called vesicles. And animals, they feed on other animals' products like milk, or they feed on other animals for meat, and they also feed on plants. And then there is plants, the animal plants, the kingdom plants. So plants are multicellular. They have a nucleus, they have a cell wall made out of cellulose, and they contain chloroplast, and they feed by photosynthesis. Next we have fungi. So fungi are multicellular. They have a nucleus, they have cell walls not made of cellulose, and they don't have chloroplast. For an example of fungi is mushrooms or ringworms or athlete's feet. These are all examples of fungi. Fungi, it's like molds. So they are parasitic. They feed on you. They feed on organisms. Next we have prokaryotes, protostea. Next we have protostea. Protostea are both multicellular and unicellular. They could be many-celled or single-celled. Multicellular means it could have lots of cells, and unicellular means it's mainly one cell, single cell. It could have a cell wall, and it could also have a chloroplast, but it could also not have a chloroplast, and it could also not have a cell wall. Next we have prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are bacterium. So bacteria are often unicellular, which means they are single-celled. They don't have nucleus. They are the only ones with no nucleus, except for viruses, but they are not considered as in kingdoms. So they don't have nucleus, and they have a cell wall, but not made of cellulose, and they don't have a mitochondria. Mitochondria is the energy house of a cell. That means they provide energy for the cell. Like in sperm cells, they have mitochondria. It's used for swimming. The mitochondria give the sperm cell energy to swim. Without the mitochondria, the sperms won't be able to swim. And bacteria don't have it. Prokaryotes don't have mitochondria. Now we have viruses. Viruses are half dead and half living. Why is that, you might ask? Because viruses, when they are outside a body, they just float. They don't do anything but exist. But when they are inside a body, they tend to multiply. They tend to grow. They tend to do it. So when they're inside a body, they're growing. But by the way, viruses are not part of the kingdom. They're not in the kingdom. They're not considered a living organism. That's because they don't have cells in them. But it's still going. This is still an ongoing argument. Some scientists say they are a living organism, and some say it's not a living organism. So a virus's structure contains a DNA coating and a protein layer. So this will be a DNA, Na, and this will be the protein coating. So a virus's structure just contains a single strand of DNA and a protein coating. Next, let's talk about the kingdom animals. So, as in kingdom animals, there is lots of types of phylum. The kingdom animals, as I said before, there are lots of types of kingdom. Prokaryotes, protostia, animals, plants, fungi. These are kingdoms. Now let's talk about inside kingdom animals. There are lots of other phylums. Phylum, vertebrates. Now we're going to talk about vertebrates. What are vertebrates? Vertebrates are animals with a rod on their back, a rod going through their body, like our spinal cord, which helps us to stand. So phylum vertebrates. First, let's talk about class. First, let's talk about fish. Fish is a class. There are lots of types of fishes. There is sharks. There is lot of clownfish. There is sprinchers, and there is lots of other types of salmon. For example, there are lots of types of fishes, and they all have scales. They have fins. They are streamlined structures. And they have gills. These are fish examples of. These are the properties of fish. Now there is amphibians. Amphibians can live in water and land. For example, are frogs, toads. And then there is reptiles, which is also another class. Reptiles are snakes. They have scaly features. They live in land. They can also be in water. They have scaly. They have waterproof eggs, etc. Then there is us, mammals. We are mammals, of course, and we have fur. That's why we are mammals, and we have mammary glands, and we feed the baby, and we give birth to the baby. Now we have arthropods phylum. So arthropods, the phylum arthropods. Arthropods have joined legs. They have joined legs, which makes the phylum. They have joined legs are called arthropods. So arthropods are insects, crustaceans, arachnids, and myriapods. So insects, they have like vestigial wings. That means it's just for show. They might have 4 pairs of vestigial wings, which means most of them could be just for show, and 2 of them could also be just for show, and 2 of them could be active. And crustaceans, they have extra cell, like crabs. They're crustaceans. Crabs, or there are lots of crabs. There are lots of examples for crustaceans. Then there is arachnids. Arachnids are spiders. They have 4 pairs of joined legs. Then there is myriapods. They have segmented bodies, and they have a long pair of legs. Then there is kingdom plants. There is 2 types of phylum for kingdom plants. Those are ferns and flowering plants. Ferns are non-flowering plants. They don't have flowers present in them. They have leaves which has sprouts present. And then there is flowering plants, which is flowers. This is plants which contains flowers, and they are reproduced by flowers. Now this is all for chapter 1. So have a nice day, and thank you for this.